Hello, my name is Claire Reynolds. I'm 57 years old, and until 3 months ago, I thought I was a good mother. I raised my daughter Lily as a single mom after her father died in a construction accident when she was 8. I worked 3 jobs at one point, cleaning houses by day, waiting tables by night, and baking muffins at 3 a.m. for a local coffee shop that paid in cash. Everything I did for her. I missed meals, skipped birthdays, and drained my savings account to send her to college without loans. When she married into a well-off family, I thought, finally, my girl's safe. She won't ever have to suffer the way I did. I was wrong. So wrong. This past Mother's Day, Lily showed up at my small apartment in Cincinnati with a paper bag she'd clearly crumpled and smoothed out again. She hugged me with one arm, her other hand clutching her phone, and said, "Sorry, Mom, we're just in a rush today. I have brunch with Wyatt's parents." I tried not to let it sting. I'd been alone for 6 straight Mother's Days since she got married. This was the first time she visited before noon. "Here," she said, pressing the bag into my hands. Her smile was tight, tired, or maybe it was forced. "You'll love it. It's practical." I pulled the tissue paper aside and stared at what was inside. A bar of soap, floral scented, from a discount store. I knew the label. I'd seen it before, in the clearance bin, $1.99. There was even a scratch on the back where the price tag had been peeled off in a hurry. The soap was cracked slightly at the edge, as if it had been dropped. My mouth moved, but I couldn't speak for a moment, so I just smiled. "Thanks, sweetheart. This'll be nice in the bathroom." "Right?" she chirped, her eyes already flicking toward the door. "I figured you're always saying you need more soaps." I wasn't. I had said once that I couldn't afford Bath and Body Works anymore. She didn't stay for tea, didn't even sit down. She kissed me on the cheek and left, Wyatt waiting in the car with the engine still running. The silence after she walked out was thicker than ever. I stared at the soap for a long time, still sitting on my kitchen counter. And then, out of habit, I opened my phone to check Facebook. And that's when I saw it. Her post. A photo of Wyatt's mom, Sharon, in front of a Tesla, captioned, "A gift for the woman who shaped the love of my life. You deserve nothing less than luxury." The comments were full of hearts and applause emojis. "She's so lucky to have a daughter-in-law like you. You're the sweetest. Such a thoughtful gift." And there, in the corner of the photo, barely visible, a delivery sheet. Billing address, my home. I blinked, leaned in. I recognized the payment summary. It matched a charge I had seen just 2 months earlier on my own bank statement, when Lily called me crying. "Mom, I need help. It's urgent. Wyatt's got some medical stuff we're sorting through, and the insurance is being awful. I just need $30,000 for a short-term thing. Please, I would never ask if it weren't serious." I didn't hesitate. I didn't question. I transferred the money the same day. $30,000. My retirement. Gone. And now, it was sitting in Sharon's driveway, on 4 luxury wheels. I dropped the phone. I sat down at the kitchen table and stared at the bar of soap again. This time, I didn't smile. This time, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't rage, not yet. It was silence. It was a hollowness, like standing in a house where all the furniture's been taken and only the marks on the floor remain. It was the sound of something sacred breaking in slow motion. That night, Lily called me 5 times. I didn't answer. By the 6th, she left a message. "Mom, I really hope you're not looking too closely into that post. There's stuff you don't understand. Please don't do anything. Please call me. I'll explain." The thing is, I wasn't planning to do anything. But her message, it lit the fuse. Because you don't beg someone not to look closer unless you know there's more to see. So I did. I went through my financial history. I opened up the joint credit card I had once foolishly given her just in case, and I saw every trip to high-end salons, every boutique charge, and even a down payment for her in-laws' beach house, each receipt another dagger. And every time I picked up that soap, I heard her voice, "It's practical." That's when I knew this wasn't carelessness. This was calculated, planned. She used me, and then gave me soap. The next morning, I drove downtown. I walked into the office of an old friend, Deborah Langley, a no-nonsense lawyer who used to volunteer at the women's shelter I worked at years ago. When I told her everything, she didn't say, "I'm sorry." She said, "Let's fix it." That's when the woman my daughter used to call Mommy quietly began reclaiming her name, not as Lily's mother, but as Claire. Claire, the woman who had been generous to a fault. Claire, who sacrificed decades of comfort for a daughter who chose status over blood. Claire, who was done being the silent provider, because there's only so long you can hand someone your love before they start thinking it's free. And it wasn't, not anymore. People say being a single mom is like trying to hold up the sky with a spoon. I say, sometimes it's worse than that. When Lily's father, Nathan, died in a scaffolding collapse on site, I was only 35. He left behind a toolbox, a dozen shirts that still smelled like his cologne, and a half-written birthday card tucked inside a book he never finished. And a daughter, 8 years old, obsessed with astronomy and peanut butter toast. The night of his funeral, she fell asleep on the couch, hugging his work boots. I remember that image more vividly than anything else from that year. Not the church service, not the hospital call. Just that, her tiny arms wrapped around a pair of dusty boots, trying to hold on to the last thing that felt like him. That night, I stood in the kitchen and made a silent vow. I would give her the world, even if I had to bury my own dreams to do it. And I did. We moved out of our old house because I couldn't keep up with the mortgage. I sold my grandmother's necklace to pay for Lily's braces. I quit my dream of starting a baking business and took every job I could find, cleaning, waiting, packaging baked goods at 3 a.m. She never asked for much, but I gave anyway. Her birthdays were humble, but filled with warmth. A small cake, always homemade, with little paper decorations I cut myself. I remember once when she was 12, her friends had Barbie dolls with real diamond earrings. I gave her a thrift store telescope, and when she looked through it for the first time, her mouth formed a silent wow. She hugged me that night and whispered, "I don't need diamonds, Mom. This is cooler." That's the version of Lily I still see when I close my eyes. But she didn't stay that girl. By the time she got into college, the shift had started. I remember how she frowned when I dropped her off in my rusted-out Corolla, while other kids arrived in shiny SUVs with monogrammed luggage. She didn't say anything cruel. Lily never needed to. It was all in her eyes, that flicker of shame, that glance that lasted just a second too long. I still remember one day when she called me during her sophomore year. She was crying. "Mom, they all went skiing for winter break, and I couldn't go. I just stayed in the dorms. I feel like such a loser." I told her what any mother would. "Baby, you're not a loser. You're smart. You're going places. This is temporary." She sniffled. "You don't understand, Mom. Everyone's got connections. I'm just some girl from nowhere." Some girl from nowhere. That one stuck with me because I thought I was giving her everything. But maybe what she wanted was something else entirely. After graduation, she started dating Wyatt. He was polite enough, too polished for my liking. His hands were soft, like they'd never held a wrench. His smile was always a little too perfect, like he'd practiced it in a mirror. When I met his parents, I brought them a homemade berry cobbler in a casserole dish wrapped in a tea towel. Sharon, his mother, barely looked at it. "Oh, how quaint," she said, placing it aside like it was a donation to Goodwill. That was the first time I felt it. The gap. The gaping canyon between what I had given Lily and what she now seemed to want. She stopped calling me Mommy not long after. I became Mom, then Claire, when she was around Wyatt's friends. I didn't say anything. I just smiled and poured more tea. The worst part, I told myself it was okay. I told myself this was part of growing up, that when she had her own child someday, she'd remember the value of real love. But now I wonder if all I did was raise someone who learned how to take. Wyatt's family lived in a world I had only ever seen through catalogs and television. Marble kitchen islands, wine fridges that cost more than my car, vacations with names like Tuscany and Santorini dropped casually into brunch conversations. And Sharon, Lily's mother-in-law, was queen of that empire. Always in tailored linen pants, her hair in a perfect silver bob, her fingernails glossy in a soft pink that screamed expensive but quiet. She spoke like someone who had never had to raise her voice to get what she wanted. When Lily started spending more time with them, her tone changed. Sharon says it's better to invest in quality items than buy cheap stuff all the time. She thinks it's important for women to present themselves well, like with structured jackets and silk scarves. And then the one that felt like a dagger, even though she said it lightly. Sharon said, "I have great taste for someone with such humble roots." I laughed at the time. Laughed because I didn't know what else to do. Because what was I supposed to say? "No, honey, we don't use phrases like humble roots to describe the woman who cleaned toilets to pay for your piano lessons." But I bit my tongue. I always bit my tongue. At their engagement dinner, Sharon made a toast. She raised her glass, smiled at Lily and said, "Wyatt has chosen a gem, and now Lily will finally be surrounded by the kind of family she deserves." Everyone clapped, except me. I just held my glass a little tighter, like it might crack in my hand. That night, when I hugged Lily goodbye, she smelled like Chanel. Her earrings sparkled under the lobby lights of the hotel. She kissed my cheek and said, "Don't worry, Mom. I won't change." But she already had. After the wedding, things escalated quickly. She stopped asking me for advice. She started asking Sharon. She didn't come to me when she got the job offer in New York. She told me 2 days before the move. When I asked how I could help, she said, "It's handled. Sharon already arranged everything. Even the rent deposit, even the moving service." When I asked if she needed any of the kitchen stuff I'd saved for her, the dishes from my hope chest, the casserole pans, I still remember what she said. "Oh, Mom, Sharon already bought me a whole Le Creuset set in teal. It's way more our style." Our style. I boxed everything back up that night, alone. A few months later, I saw a photo online. It was Sharon and Lily at some women's luncheon. They were in matching pastel suits, standing under a golden banner that read, "Empowered Women, Empower Women." My name wasn't mentioned in the caption, not even once. The world saw them as the perfect mother-daughter duo. And me, I was the ghost, the footnote, the woman who existed in the background, holding a bar of soap and pretending it was enough. And yet, despite all of this, when Lily called me crying, I still answered. When she needed help, I still showed up. When she said it's urgent, I reached for my checkbook before I even asked why. Because I thought, maybe deep down, I was still her mother. But Sharon got the photo ops, the brunches, the goddamn Tesla. She didn't scrub blood out of Lily's soccer socks in middle school. She didn't learn to braid hair with one hand while stirring oatmeal with the other. But she got the credit because she fit the mold, and I just paid the bills. I didn't come from money, and for most of my life, I didn't expect to. But I wasn't dumb. When Lily left home, I knew my job wasn't done. Just because your child moves out doesn't mean the bills stop. So I did what I had always done. I worked, but I also started learning. At night, when the apartment was silent, I sat with my laptop and watched YouTube videos about personal finance. I read blogs about women who started over in their 50s. I subscribed to newsletters that explained investing in plain English. I didn't talk about it to anyone. I just made a plan. One year, I took the holiday tip money from my cleaning clients and bought a used sewing machine. 6 months later, I was selling custom cushion covers on Etsy, then napkin sets, then curtains. By year 3, I had enough saved to open a small online shop. The orders weren't huge, but they were steady. Every time I sold something, I transferred 20% to a savings account marked someday. Someday, I'd take a vacation that didn't involve crashing on someone's couch. Someday, I'd fix the leaky faucet and not just tighten it with pliers. Someday, I'd stop saying I'm fine when I wasn't. But that someday came slower than I expected. especially with Lily's emergencies. There was always something, a rent increase, a last-minute wedding cost, an unexpected insurance hiccup. Mom, I swear I'll pay you back. She never did. And every time I thought about pushing back, I'd see her little girl face in my memory, those teary eyes at 8 years old after Nathan's funeral, and I'd cave. But inside, something had started hardening. Not anger, not yet, just awareness. Like when you find a hairline crack in the teacup you've used for years. It still works, still holds tea, but now you notice it every time you lift the handle. I remember one phone call clearly, maybe because it was the first time I lied to her. She called in a panic. Mom, our oven stopped working and we have people coming for Thanksgiving. I don't want to ask why it's parents. They've done so much. Can you help? I stared at the screen. My bank account had just hit 5 figures for the first time in my life. It felt sacred, like something I'd earned by bleeding slowly for years. So I said, I wish I could, honey, but I'm really stretched thin this month. And you know what she said? Wow, that's okay. I guess we'll manage. That pause, that hesitation before okay, it said everything. I wasn't useful in that moment, so I wasn't interesting. That's when I began tracking everything, every transfer, every receipt. Every time she said, I'll pay you back, I saved it. I didn't tell anyone, didn't even tell Deborah, my friend who'd become like a sister over the years. But I kept a folder tucked behind the kitchen toaster, labeled Claire's Facts. Because I didn't want to have to argue. I wanted to prove that I had given, that I had cared, that I wasn't crazy, that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the one who failed. The first time I told Lily no, it felt like stepping off a cliff. She had called one afternoon in early spring, voice sweet, almost syrupy. Mom, do you think you could co-sign on a loan? Wyatt and I are thinking of buying a condo. It's just temporary. His dad's waiting on a property to come through, so we need a little help up front. I paused, cradling the phone between my shoulder and cheek while folding laundry, faded sheets, secondhand towels. She always called when I was doing something ordinary, maybe because she assumed I'd always say yes before I had time to think. I'm sorry, honey, I said slowly. I can't do that. There was silence, then a sharp inhale. Oh. No protest, no guilt trip, just that one syllable. But it echoed, because it wasn't just about the condo. It was about her picture of me, of what I'd always been, reliable, sacrificial, available. That version of me, she assumed it came without limits, but I'd been learning about boundaries, about worth, about what it means to give without being hollowed out. I told her gently that my finances were now tied to my own future. She said, I understand. But the chill in her voice said otherwise. That week, I didn't hear from her. And the week after that, I saw photos on Instagram of the condo. The caption, dreams come true when you work hard and have faith. No mention of Wyatt's parents. Definitely no mention of the loan they must have gotten somewhere else. And for the first time, I didn't feel left out. I felt relieved because I was no longer the first one they turned to when they needed something. But the relief didn't last. 2 months later, Lily showed up at my door in tears. She didn't hug me right away. She sat on my couch, still in her designer boots, and dabbed at her cheeks with a tissue she had clearly brought with her. "Mom, I hate asking. I hate this." "What is it, sweetheart?" "It's just medical stuff, complicated. I can't get into it, but I need $30,000, just for a short time." I should have paused, should have asked more, but old habits don't break easy. And she was crying, so I wired the money. I told myself I'd ask questions later. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat at my desk, looking at the transaction confirmation, and that now familiar ache settled into my chest. I just drained a huge chunk of the life I had rebuilt. But it was for Lily, always for Lily, until it wasn't, until Mother's Day came, until the soap, until the Instagram post, until the Tesla. That was the true turning point, because after that I didn't just feel used, I felt erased. And that was something I couldn't let continue, not if I wanted to recognize myself when I looked in the mirror. I hadn't seen Deborah Langley in nearly a year, not since the memorial for our friend Yvette. But when I walked into her law office that Monday morning after the Tesla post, she didn't ask why I was there. She just looked up from her desk and said, "Sit, I'll make coffee." Deborah wasn't the kind of woman who tiptoed around truth. She was the kind who wore boots in July, kept her gray hair wild, and called lies by their first name. When she returned with 2 mugs, she didn't hand me sugar or cream. She handed me a yellow legal pad and said, "Start writing." I blinked. Writing what? Everything, every dollar, every time she asked for help, every excuse. You want to take your power back? Then you're going to build your case like a soldier packs ammunition, 1 bullet at a time. I hadn't even told her the full story yet. But Deborah had known me long enough to recognize the look in my eyes, the look of a woman who's been gutted quietly for years and just discovered the wound is still bleeding. So I wrote. I filled that pad from top to bottom. Dates, bank transfers, voicemails. Every instance I'd been told, "It's urgent." Every time I'd been thanked, and then forgotten. When I finished, Deborah whistled low. "She's good," she said. "Got to give her that. Most con artists are." "She's not a con artist," I said too quickly. "She's just lost." Deborah set down her mug with a click. "No, a lost girl finds her way home. What your daughter's done, that's planned, that's patterned, that's manipulation." I didn't answer, because deep down, I already knew she was right. "You said it was medical," she continued, "but it was for a car, for a woman who's never sacrificed a damn thing for her. Tell me, Claire, how many times do you want to be burned before you realize it's not the flame's fault? It's your refusal to step back." That hit harder than I expected. I looked out the window of her office. Downtown Cincinnati buzzed below, people crossing streets, sipping lattes, making meetings. I wondered how many of them had daughters they didn't recognize anymore. I just wanted to give her a better life, I whispered. Deborah softened. She leaned forward, voice lower now. And you did. But here's the truth you don't want to admit. She doesn't want your version of better. She wants status, approval, applause. She wants Sharon. No, she wants what Sharon represents, power without sacrifice. That was the moment I broke. Not loudly, not with tears, just quietly. My hands shook, my voice wavered, but my spine straightened. I said, "Help me protect what's left." Deborah nodded once, like a commander receiving orders. "We'll start by cutting her off, financially. Then we document everything. If she tries to fight it, we'll be ready." And just like that, I had an ally, not a cheerleader. Not someone who would tell me it's okay and leave me to drown, but someone who would hand me a life jacket and teach me how to swim again. That night, as I sat in bed, the legal pad beside me, I played back Lily's voicemail for the last time. "Mom, please don't do anything rash." I deleted it and whispered to the dark, "I'm not being rash, I'm being done." The day I walked into the bank to freeze my accounts, the air conditioning was too cold for late spring, and I was sweating anyway, not from the heat, but from the weight of 30 years of yeses that I was about to undo with a single signature. The banker, young, polite, with the kind of neat hair that came from never missing a haircut, smiled as I sat down. "How can I help you today, Ms. Reynolds?" I slid the folder across the table. Inside, my account summary, transaction records, and a handwritten note that read, "Terminate joint access, effective immediately." I want to remove my daughter's access to my accounts, credit, debit, any authorized use, shut it down. His brows lifted just slightly before he nodded. "Certainly. May I ask what prompted this action?" I looked him dead in the eye. "She bought a Tesla for her mother-in-law with money I gave her for a medical emergency, and she gave me soap." He didn't ask anything else after that. Clicking keys, papers, printouts. Each step felt like cutting a cord, a tether that had held me in place, emotionally and financially, for too long. I signed my name 3 times. By the last signature, my hand didn't shake anymore. "It's done," he said, stacking the papers neatly. "She'll be notified that her cards no longer work." "Good," I said. And I meant it. I walked out into the sunshine, feeling lighter and lonelier than I had in years. There was no victory parade, no cheering, just me and the quiet realization that I'd finally chosen me. That night, my phone started buzzing. Lily. 3 missed calls, then 5, then a message. "Mom, my card's not working. What's going on?" I didn't answer. I let her sit with that silence. A few hours later, another message. "You didn't... Mom, please tell me you didn't cancel the card. What the hell? Wyatt's at the gas station." Then, "Mom, call me, now, or I swear." I muted the thread. Because threats don't work on people who've already lost everything worth protecting. I sat in my apartment, the lights off, the tea gone cold beside me, and I waited because I knew she'd come, not out of remorse, but out of desperation. And I wanted to look her in the eyes when she did. She showed up the next morning, not with flowers, not with a hug, but with fire in her eyes and fury in her voice. "You had no right to do that, Mom." Lily stormed into my apartment without waiting for an invitation. I was in the middle of buying groceries, and the card just declined, like I'm some criminal. I didn't move from my seat, didn't offer her tea, didn't apologize. I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time I didn't see my baby girl. I saw a grown woman dressed in a $400 blouse with lips that curled the same way Sharon's did when something wasn't up to standard. "I had every right," I said quietly. "It's my money, my account, my life." She scoffed. "Don't be dramatic. You've always helped me. That's what parents do." I stood up slowly. "No, that's what I did. Because I love you. Because I believed in you. Because I thought you'd do the same if the roles were reversed." Her arms folded. "You're twisting this." "No, Lily, you are. You took $30,000 from me under false pretenses. You said it was for medical needs. It was urgent. Urgent enough to buy a Tesla?" She flinched, just for a second. "Then you saw that." "I saw it, and I saw the caption, and I saw the comments, and I saw the woman who got the applause while I sat alone with a bar of soap." Her jaw tightened. "It wasn't about the soap." "No," I agreed. "It was about the message, that you don't see me anymore, not as a mother, not as a person, just as a resource." She started pacing. "Look, Wyatt's parents, his whole family, they expect a certain image. And Sharon's been generous with us. She's invested in us, in me. And I haven't?" I asked, my voice cracking for the first time. "I didn't invest my life in you. I didn't pour everything I had into making sure you didn't have to crawl the way I did." "Mom." "I sold my wedding ring to pay for your textbooks. I worked night shifts so you could go to prom. I skipped my own meals so you could eat at summer camp. I didn't ask you to do that, but you took it every time without question, without thanks." Silence, the kind that fills the room like smoke, sharp, choking, blinding. Then she said, "So what? This is your revenge, cutting me off, making a scene?" I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I finally understood. This isn't revenge. This is reality. She blinked. "I'm not punishing you, Lily. I'm protecting myself from you." Her voice dropped. "I'm your daughter. And I'm your mother, not your bank, not your social ladder, and not your scapegoat." For a moment, she looked like she might cry, but then it was gone, replaced by something colder. "You'll regret this." I didn't answer because I wouldn't. She walked to the door, hesitated, and added, "Sharon warned me this would happen. She said you'd get bitter and jealous." I smiled then, a real, full smile. "I'm not jealous, Lily. I'm free." And as the door clicked shut behind her, I sat down and breathed in a kind of silence I hadn't known in years. Not empty, but peaceful. Because some confrontations don't need shouting, they just need truth. The invitation came 3 weeks later. A clean white envelope slid under my door like a quiet miracle. At first, I thought it was junk mail. Then I saw the letterhead, Cincinnati Women's Business Alliance. Inside, a formal invite to their spring gala and a request to honor Claire Reynolds, founder of Hearth and Thread, for outstanding entrepreneurial contribution. I sat there blinking. I hadn't even known I was nominated. Turns out one of my repeat clients, an editor at a local lifestyle magazine, had submitted my name. She said my shop story had inspired hundreds of women to believe in second chapters. For a moment, I hesitated. I didn't have a gown. I didn't do galas. But then I remembered all the nights I sat stitching cushion covers while others slept. All the times I told myself, someday was now. I wore a black dress from a consignment shop, paired with my mother's pearl earrings. Simple, quiet. But I walked into that ballroom like I belonged. The tables were dressed in silver linen, waiters in white gloves, and soft music floated through the air like something from a dream. Halfway through the night, while I was sipping water and listening to the keynote speaker, I heard the MC say something that made me freeze. Our next honoree built her business from a single secondhand sewing machine and a heart full of resilience. Claire Reynolds, me. I stood, hands trembling, and walked to the stage. The applause was real, warm, earned. As I reached the microphone, I glanced around, and that's when I saw her, Sharon, at a back table, her silver bob unmistakable, her lips pursed, and beside her, Lily, my daughter, wearing the same dress I'd once offered to help her buy in college, the one she said wasn't stylish enough. They hadn't come for me. They were guests of someone else. Sharon, I realized, sat on the Alliance's donor board. Oh, the irony. I took the microphone and smiled. My name is Claire Reynolds, I began. I never thought I'd be standing on a stage like this. For most of my life, I've worked in silence, mornings before sunrise, nights long after the city sleeps. A pause. I started with nothing. No investors, no family money, no spouse to lean on, just a daughter, and the belief that if I could keep going, one day she'd be proud of me. I didn't look at Lily when I said it, but the room went still. So I sewed, I sold, I failed, I tried again, and somehow one pillow turned into hundreds, one customer turned into thousands, and a little shop called Hearth and Thread became something I never dreamed of, proof that you're never too late to start. Applause rose again, but I barely heard it, because I had seen Sharon's face pale and Lily's eyes drop, and in that moment I felt no hatred, no gloating, only peace, because the truth had a stage now, and I didn't have to fight for anyone to believe it. After the ceremony, people shook my hand, asked for advice, praised my grit. But I watched from the corner of my eye as Sharon gathered her purse stiffly and Lily followed her out of the room without a word to me. They left the same way they had come, confident, composed, and completely unaware that the room they walked into expecting to own had just crowned someone else. Not with jewels, but with honor, real honor, the kind you can't buy with a Tesla. For the first few days after the gala, I heard nothing. No calls, no texts, no knocks at the door. And in that silence, something beautiful happened. I exhaled. I didn't realize how long I'd been holding my breath, waiting, always waiting, for the next request, the next guilt trip, the next moment I'd be asked to give again. But it didn't come. Instead, I walked to the market. I cooked meals for myself. I lit candles in the evening without wondering if I'd need to save the wax for emergencies. And then, on Thursday, the call came. Blocked number. I almost didn't answer, but something in me whispered, "This isn't over yet." I picked up. Claire. It was Sharon. Cold, controlled, clipped. "We need to talk." I waited. "I had no idea you were affiliated with the Alliance," she continued. "It was unexpected. You should have told us." I smiled, even though she couldn't see it. Us, as if we were still pretending to be family. "Why?" I asked. "So you could approve my success?" There was a pause. Then, "Lily's been very upset. She feels humiliated." "Is that so?" "She said you've been distant, that you cut her off without warning." I gave her 30 years of warning. Silence. Then the real reason for the call slipped through. "Do you really think it's wise to air personal issues in a public setting?" Ah, there it was. Sharon didn't care about feelings. She cared about optics. "Sharon," I said calmly, "what I shared was mine, my truth, my story. I didn't mention names, but if anyone in that room recognized themselves, well, that says more about them than it does about me. You've embarrassed this family." "No, I embarrassed your illusion of control." She started to speak again, but I ended the call. I stood in the center of my apartment for a long time after that. It wasn't triumph I felt. It wasn't bitterness either. It was closure. Sharon had always tried to reshape me into something palatable, but the truth was too loud now. And once truth takes the stage, there's no stuffing it back into the wings. That night, I slept with the window open and the breeze on my face. The sound of quiet wasn't loneliness anymore. It was freedom. She came on a Sunday, unannounced, of course. I was on the balcony watering my geraniums when I heard the knock. It wasn't frantic. It wasn't angry. It was measured. I opened the door and there she was, Lily, in a sweatshirt that was probably worth more than my rent. Hair pulled back in a low ponytail. No makeup, just her. Raw or rehearsed. I wasn't sure anymore. "Hi," she said softly, like the last month hadn't happened. "Hi," I replied. I didn't open the door wide, just enough to be polite, enough to keep the boundary visible. "Can I come in?" I let the pause stretch. Then I stepped aside. She sat down on the edge of the couch like it wasn't familiar anymore. "This place hasn't changed," she said, scanning the room. "No," I replied, "but I have." She swallowed. "I saw the video from the gala." I said nothing. "I didn't know you'd built all that. I mean, I knew you had your little shop, but I didn't realize." "Little shop," I echoed. "That's what you thought?" Her face flushed. "I didn't mean it like that." "You never mean it like that," I said. "But somehow it always is." She shifted. "Mom, look. I'm sorry if you felt hurt. That wasn't my intention." I raised an eyebrow. "If I felt hurt?" She backtracked quickly. "I mean, I didn't mean to hurt you, but you never said you felt so taken advantage of." "You never asked," she sighed. I thought we were okay, that you knew how much I appreciated everything." "Appreciated," I said, letting the word hang. "Lily, you took $30,000 from me. You called it a medical emergency. You bought Sharon a luxury car. She's done a lot for us, too. I didn't raise you to trade gratitude for gifts." She blinked. I saw it then, the flicker of defense, followed by something harder to define, a tremble beneath her confidence. "Wyatt's upset," she said. "He said this whole thing makes us look unstable. His dad asked if you were what?" I asked. "Lying, using me, taking without giving?" She looked away. "I came to talk, to explain." "No, Lily, you came to control the narrative, but you don't get to do that here." Her eyes welled, and for a moment, I almost softened. Almost, but I'd softened too many times before, and it had cost me more than just money. It had cost me my voice. She stood abruptly. "Fine, if this is who you are now." "No," I said gently. "This is who I've always been. You just stopped looking." And as she walked out, she didn't slam the door. She didn't cry. She simply left, like someone who had realized for the first time that the ground beneath her had shifted, and it would never tilt in her favor again. The last time I saw Sharon was at the grocery store. She was standing near the cheese counter, holding a basket instead of her usual designer tote. No makeup, no entourage, no long-winded opinions about wine pairings, just her, alone. When she noticed me, she hesitated, then lifted her chin as if to reclaim a piece of the power she once wore like perfume. "Claire," she said, like a polite cough. "Funny seeing you here." I nodded. "Not funny. It's where normal people buy food." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "You've changed." "No, I've just stopped hiding." She gave a tight smile. "Lily's struggling, you know." I imagine she is. She's always felt torn between loyalty and appearances. I tilted my head. No one forced her to pick Sharon over me. I never asked her to, but you benefited from it. She didn't deny it. For once, the great Sharon Winthrop stood in silence. I felt no urge to gloat, no bitterness, only clarity. "You know," I said, reaching for a bag of apples, "I used to think I'd failed as a mother. that maybe if I had more money, more class, more polish, she would have stayed close. Sharon looked uncomfortable. But now, I continued, I realize I raised a girl who thought love was transactional. And that's not a reflection of me. That's a reflection of who she allowed to influence her. Her face twitched. You're saying I corrupted your daughter? I'm saying she learned how to value people the way you do, by status, by image, by gain. Sharon didn't reply. She turned and walked away, heels clicking against the polished floor like punctuation marks to a sentence she could no longer control. I didn't watch her go. Instead, I checked out my groceries, went home, fed the cat. Life didn't explode. It settled. Days passed, then weeks. Lily didn't call. I didn't wait. Because the most powerful goodbye isn't the one filled with drama or shouted accusations. It's the quiet choice to stop shrinking yourself to be loved. One afternoon, as I was updating my shop's inventory, I received an email. Your story has been selected for our Voices of Strength podcast series. We believe your journey will inspire thousands. Please let us know if you'd be open to sharing. I stared at the screen and smiled. I wouldn't use names. I wouldn't need to. Because when a woman reclaims herself, her story echoes far beyond the walls where she was once overlooked. I closed the laptop and whispered to the quiet, goodbye. Not in anger, not in sorrow, but in peace. It started with cinnamon rolls, a batch I made for the widow 2 floors below after her hip surgery. She texted me that same evening, best I've had in 20 years. Ever thought of teaching a class? I hadn't, but the next weekend, 5 women sat at my kitchen table, flour on their sleeves, laughter in their mouths, and something warm bloomed in my chest. It wasn't just about baking, it was about belonging. They started calling it Claire's Kitchen, a little Saturday circle of women who'd been underestimated, overlooked, overworked. Some were single moms, some were empty nesters trying to figure out what to do with all the space their children left behind. They brought stories. They brought tears. They brought joy. They brought themselves. One afternoon, Deborah showed up with a box of printed aprons that said, "We rise together." "Trademark it," she joked, "before Hallmark does." I laughed, but deep down, I knew. This wasn't just about aprons or baking. It was about healing. Every time I opened my door to these women, I stitched a part of myself back together. I no longer needed Lily's approval. Because I had found my chosen family, a group of women who saw me, who asked how I was and waited for the real answer, who didn't expect anything in return for their kindness. One Sunday, we had an open table, a potluck with music and storytelling. Someone played guitar, someone else read a poem, and me, I stood up, flowers still on my apron, and told my story. Not the whole thing, not the pain, but the rising. And when I finished, a woman I barely knew took my hand and whispered, "Thank you. I thought I was the only one." That's when I realized every time I told myself to stay small, to not make waves, to forgive quietly, I had silenced 100 other women doing the same. But now we were all speaking together. I haven't heard from Lily in months, and for once, that no longer feels like a wound. It feels like space. Space to breathe, to create, to live. Some mornings, I wake up before dawn and sit with my coffee on the balcony, watching the first light crack open the sky. I think about who I used to be, the woman who said yes to everyone but herself, the mother who equated love with sacrifice, the daughter of silence, the giver of everything. I don't hate that woman. She got me here, but I don't miss her either. Now, I run my shop with pride. I take weekends off. I wear colors I love, not just what's on sale. I donate anonymously to single mothers starting small businesses, because if someone had believed in me that way back then, maybe I would have found myself sooner. And sometimes, when I'm in the grocery store or waiting in line at the post office, someone recognizes me from the podcast or the article and says, "You're that woman, the one who told the story." I smile and say, "Yes, but I'm also just Claire." No longer a bank, no longer a background character in my daughter's curated life. Just Claire, the woman who stopped handing out pieces of herself like coupons, the woman who stitched her name into every cushion, every curtain, every corner of her life, the woman who got a bar of soap on Mother's Day and turned it into a lesson the whole world heard. If you're reading this or hearing this, and you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever sacrificed so much that you forgot your own name, hear me now. You are not too late. You are not too small. You are not only what others take from you. You are allowed to outgrow the people who once called you home. You are allowed to say no without guilt. You are allowed to begin again, even if it starts with broken things, even if it starts with soap. If this story made your chest ache, if you saw yourself in Claire, giving, and slowly fading, then don't leave without telling us. Drop a comment below and share your story. Have you ever been taken for granted by someone you loved the most? Hit the like button if you've ever sacrificed for someone who never even said thank you. Subscribe for more true stories of quiet strength, powerful comebacks, and long overdue justice. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss what comes next. Because here, we tell stories for the ones who never got a spotlight. For the mothers, sisters, granddaughters, and daughters who've had enough. You are not alone. You are not forgotten. And your voice deserves to be heard. This is more than just a story. This is your reminder. You are allowed to walk away and still win.